And this is something I got from eBay for less than £5, and I think I mentioned Howard Wardrop in my Zardoz haul, and this is Them Bones in Legend, in hardcover. I used to sell this in trade paperback back in the day. Let's have a look. And I've got very sort of happy memories of this. You know, the paper stock's a bit browned, is what it is. Let's see, what date is this from? 89, yeah. And it's dedicated to Lee Kennedy, who's a friend of mine, and she used to be married to Christopher Priest, really good sort of writer, small output, massively neglected. I've not seen her for, gosh, 16 years now. I am hoping to get together at some point. I'll definitely do an interview with her on the channel, because she's a great writer who sadly people don't seem to know about, and a lovely, lovely lady. So that's Howard Wardrop's Them Bones. Actually, before I move on to the unboxing I'm doing here, just to say a bit more about Them Bones. I think this is about anachronistic fossils, I seem to recall. I've never read it, but I'm looking forward to it. And I don't know, I just... those days, these were just great times, the late 80s in SF. SF in the 80s, particularly American SF, was so exciting. The early 80s was more about the British, I think. And there was great stuff, you know, in the late 80s as well. And we'll cover that more next year. I want to do quite a bit about British SF, New Wave, also the 80s, particularly the Interzone crowd. And yeah, but it was great to see lots of new writers like this producing sort of stimulating work. So that's that. I'm really pleased with that. And Legend, of course, was part of Century Hutchinson. Arrow was the A format imprint, and they adopted Legend as their SF sort of thing. So there you go. So that's that. So what have we got in here? Excellent packaging, as you can see. And just going to pop this out. And what he's really good at with the packaging is that the packaging is really sturdy and good, but it's not impossible to tear things open, which is good, you know. So you get a lot of it. And his postage isn't the cheapest, but it is of great quality. And these came really quickly. I think a lot of the time dealers, you know, are at the mercy of the post office, really. You know, you can't blame them. And the post office, the post office have been striking a lot this year, but I'm all for that, because people need to use their power, you know. And as you can see in here already, there's some lovely stuff in here. And again, we're looking at sort of 80s, late 80s, maybe early 90s. And these are books, again, I remember, which I never got around to buying or reading. And as I've said before, late 80s, early 90s, I was finding that I was increasingly dissatisfied with what was happening in the world of SF. I'd read an awful lot of science fiction from the mid-70s right the way through the 80s. And when I started bookselling in 84, the fantasy boom had been going for 7 years. But it was sort of like one writer at a time then. It wasn't a thing where, you know, you had lots. There was lots of stuff coming out, but you'd only get one writer dominant at a time. Now, you know, it's just a totally different thing. So what have we got? So let's have a look. Oh, this is nice. And let's just get that up there. And as you can see, this is Count Geiger's Blues by Michael Bishop, which is a superhero novel. And isn't that handsome? It's Tor, USA. And as you see, this dealer, he wraps things up beautifully, really, really well. So I'm just going to pop that to one side, see what else we've got, and then we look at the detail. This is an old favourite as well. I mean, I've said before that I'm not a massive fan of Kim Stanley Robinson, but I do like the Three Californias trilogy, and this is the second one, The Gold Coast, which in the UK didn't have a hardcover. Again, this is Tor, and these are demi format, so the medium-sized hardcovers. And Three Californias is a thematic trilogy about 3 possible future Californias. And I remember really enjoying this. And I've got the trade, which is the UK first. I did have a little A format of this, which I've sold on. I sold that in Hay on Y. And I like these a lot. And Kim used to get characterized as one of the humanists. Something that the narrative that sort of came up in the mid-80s in American SF was that they were deemed to be 2 schools. You know, they were the humanists and they were the cyberpunks. And, you know, it wasn't that simple and polarized. Because, of course, there was, you know, traditional hard SF. There were people who were sort of came up in the new wave period writing. It was very, very diverse. But for the new writers, it often got characterized that way. And let me think, this would have been about his, let's think, 3, 4, I think it's his 5th novel. And there would have been a short story collection, Planet on the Table, as well. And I collect his early work because I like it. His prose never entertains me as much as I wanted to, but he is a good guy. And my favourite book by him remains the Philip K. Dick book. But I now have first edition hardcovers of all of these, though admittedly 2 of them are UK firsts and this is a US one, because to say there was no UK hardcover of this, and they're all from different publishers as well. So as I say, a thematic choice doesn't matter that much. Right, casting all this gubbins aside, we do have something else as well. So I'll let you just feast your eyes on those. Some great 80s stuff. Look at that, isn't that beautiful? Beautiful jackets, and blue seems to be the theme, doesn't it? So now this is a book from the 90s, and again, it's somebody I like, but I've never got around to reading this one, because in the 90s, as I've said, I was concentrating on my career a lot. I wasn't reading a lot of SF. I was selling it. I was running a first editions club. I was running a mail order book selling thing, which was sending stuff internationally. And this is Heavy Weather by Bruce Sterling, and yeah, author of The Hacker Crackdown. So this is early 90s, because I met Bruce when he did a tour to support his non-fiction book, The Hacker Crackdown, which was about authoritarian sort of figures and agencies in the US government cracking down on people computer hacking. And of course, you know, the internet was in its real infancy then. And on the back it tells you about Global Head. This is published by Millennium, so it's UK. It's got the ants there, and I think the lady, as I've said before, the lady who started Millennium, which was part of Orion, so it was Golanx, she said she picked the ant just to irritate people. Her name was Deborah something. I can't remember. I never met her, but I quite like that. I picked an ant as my SF colophon just to irritate people. And as you see, that's a royal format, it's larger. Very, very nice indeed. So just getting this is like lovely, this is like glassine, isn't it? It's a really, really nice material. It's almost a shame to unpack them, and he's got them covered as well. Really, really nice. So, and I will be buying more from this guy because I think his stuff is beautiful. And let's see, 1994. So yeah, gosh, 94, I was 31 then, so it's really quite something. And, you know, Bruce, as I say, one of the, you know, the original cyberpunks. And to me, he's the man who put punk into cyberpunk, alongside K.W. Jeter, who probably would say I'm not cyberpunk, but Bruce was. With things like The Artificial Kid from about 1980. If you've never read, that's a great book. That's a book I love in hardcover. Very, very uncommon in the UK. And the absolutely brilliant Involution Ocean, which is the punk Dune. There is a video about that, which is called, if you're bored with Dune, read Involution Ocean. I'll put a link at the end of the video if I can. And that's a great book. And it really does deserve to be reissued. So I'm just going to pop some more of this glassine-like material off here. Okay, looking in detail at the bishop, there is a bit of a mark on the jacket there, but overall this is really nice, so I'm not going to complain about that. And nice clean boards, and the paper stock's okay on that. And so I've not read this one. I do like Bishop a lot, and I've had a few, never met him in the flesh. We've had sort of emails and exchanges and, you know, messages online, and you know, he's had a tough time in the last sort of 20 years or so, but he's a great writer, very, very good indeed, and massively underrated, and a real man with heart. Very much a humanist, I would say, and, you know, for me, one of the best humanist SF writers of his era, easily. Yeah, this guy does really great packaging, so you're probably just sharing the glassine as I tear it off. And it's not glassine, it's not hard enough, but it's in that ballpark, so there we go. And yeah, talking about this a bit more, I would say that the others in the trilogy are The Wild Shore, and I've got a MacDonald of that. That was his first novel. Say this is second. Oh, it's signed 1988. That's nice. I didn't realise it was signed. Maybe that's what pushed me to buy it. I can't remember, because I've thought about it for a long time. And obviously it's a first. And yeah, so yeah, as I say, preceding this was The Wild Shore, and the one after was Pacific Edge. The Wild Shore was MacDonald in the UK. This was Orbit in the UK, so that's Little Brown. And then Pacific Edge was Unwin, strangely enough, Unwin Hyman. So there you go. So there we are. So there's a little bit of a unboxing there of some great 80s, 90s American SF. And I suppose we really should put Howard into that context as well.